21 spine-chilling tales revealed, terrifying secrets from the haunted and cursed Unexplained. Rachel's fingers brushed over the ancient leather cover, the title embossed in faded gold letters peering back at her like a sinister invitation. 21 spine-chilling tales revealed. The attic was muggy, dust swirling in the beams of light piercing through the cobwebs. She recalled her intention of moving to a quiet suburban neighborhood for a fresh start just weeks after losing her husband. But laughter had turned to haunting silence. Each creak of the old floorboards echoed ominously, warning of an unsettling presence lurking in the shadows. With a nervous glance at her 2 children, she swallowed hard. They needed comfort, and perhaps stories could provide that. She could already hear the faint whispers just beyond the walls, voices that sent shivers down her spine. Settling into the corner with her kids, she opened the book, and a gust of cold air rushed past, snuffing out the nearby candle. The shadows danced, flickering like mischievous specters, as she began to read aloud. The first story was titled, The Wailing Woman of Willow Street. Rachel's heart pounded with every chilling line, each word dripping with dread. According to the tale, a mournful figure roamed the neighborhood searching for her lost children. The winds outside howled louder, rattling the windows as the temperature dropped sharply. Rachel dismissed it as nothing more than imagination fueled by grief. But when laughter echoed from the dark corners of the room, sharp and eerie, she froze. "What was that?" whispered Emily, her eyes wide and shining with innocence, oblivious to the encroaching dread. Her younger brother, Timmy, hid behind Rachel, his grip on her hand tightening as the night deepened. An unsettling feeling crawled up Rachel's spine. She needed to reassure her kids, but uncertainty fogged her mind like the storm clouds outside. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With the eerie whisper of wind outside, Rachel couldn't shake the sense of being watched. She ventured to the window and looked out, only to see the fog creeping in like something alive. The heat of late-night panic coursed through her veins as the stories twisted in her mind. Each tale from the book seemed eerily tied to their home, building a tapestry of fear she couldn't ignore. Days passed with her wakeful nights darkened by the whispers returning, stronger now. Bedtime faded, replaced by frantic inquiries from the neighbors, their eyes now veiled in shadows of warning. What happened in their home was not just a ghost story, but a chilling truth woven through confession and regret. One unearthly night, while Rachel turned the pages onto another chilling tale, the lights flickered and shadows danced relentlessly. The tension was suffocating as she glanced towards the doorway, where a dark figure stood vaguely familiar yet hauntingly wrong. Breath trapped in her throat, she realized the stories were more than folklore, they were warnings. As dread spiraled around her, Rachel grasped her children close. They were not simply reading tales of horror, they were being drawn into the very heart of a nightmare. A question gnawed at her: would she uncover the truth about their home before it captured them too? The room trembled, eerily still, an ominous pulse echoing in her heart. What deep-rooted terror awaited in the next chilling story? The next story began to take shape in Rachel's mind. She could feel it pulling her, like a thread unraveling just beyond her grasp. This time, she flipped to a tale titled, The Forgotten Ones, and her voice trembled as she began to read. The tale told of creatures that fed on grief, hiding in the spaces between memories. They thrived on sadness, hiding in closets, under beds, waiting for the opportune moment to claim their prize. The moment her words filled the attic, a chill swept through the air, silencing even the wind outside. Timmy marveled at the pages, transfixed, while Emily's gaze drifted towards the window, her innocent expression hardening. As Rachel read on, shadows flickered across the walls and she felt that someone, or something, was there with them. "Mom, I don't like this story," Emily whispered, her voice small. Rachel offered a weak smile, hoping to convince her daughter to remain engaged. But suddenly, a loud bang startled them. The windows slammed shut with a deafening thud, sending dust flying from the windowsill. Rachel jumped, knocking the book to the floor. The moment of silence that followed felt endless. A shiver traced along her spine. "Stay close," she urged, pulling both kids into her arms. In that cramped corner, their breaths mingled and quickened, creating an anxious rhythm that echoed the terror enveloping the room. The forgotten ones, they weren't just in the stories. They were here. Rachel stood, heart racing, and peered into the darkened corners of the attic as her heart thudded in her chest. "What do you want?" she dared to ask, despite the part of her that wanted to flee. From the corners something stirred, a whisper echoed. Rachel, it wasn't a voice she recognized. It was a melody of sorrow wrapped in the familiarity of despair. "Mom, who is that?" Timmy's voice trembled against her ear. "I don't know, baby. Just listen to me." Rachel's throat dry, she could hardly whisper. The tales had wrapped around her like a noose. The shadows shifted, and she could almost make out figures, twisted and hollow, as if peeling away from the very fabric of her reality. The room grew colder, forcing her to shudder as if her skin had become a thin veil stretched across her trembling bones. "Let us out." Emily's urgency shattered the stillness. Rachel spun, eyes wide. "It's just a story. We're safe." But her own heart didn't believe it. The bubble of safety was punctured, each thump against her chest echoed a warning she could not ignore. She snatched the book from the floor and closed it, but it didn't silence the whispers. They only grew louder, a cacophony of long-buried memories, hollow laughs, and cries. Then she saw it. A reflection in the old, cracked attic mirror. Creeping closer, Rachel felt a cold, bony finger, grazing her shoulder. She recoiled, her heart racing. In the mirror stood the shadowy figure of a woman with hollow eyes, an expression crafted from grief. It looked at her with desperation. "Help us!" The air surged, thick and electric, crawling into her lungs. Rachel stumbled back, choking on her fear. She needed to escape, but escape to where? Just then, Timmy gasped, pointing to the far corner where a door she had never noticed before started to creak open on its own. "Mom, what is happening? What do we do?" Emily cried, eyes darting between the door and Rachel. Overwhelmed, Rachel felt every choice weighing heavily on her conscience. The lure of the unknown was potent. Should they investigate the door, or flee from the shadows that surrounded them? As the wind howled outside with fury, their breaths quickened, each heartbeat a countdown to a choice they had to make. With dread pooling in her stomach, Rachel moved toward the door, feeling an unseen force pull her in. What lay beyond it was unknown, but it felt like the edge of an abyss. Would they step into the darkness together, or would the forgotten ones claim them first? The moment Rachel reached for the doorknob, a jolt of electricity shot through her, like ice water down her spine. The door creaked wider, revealing only darkness, like a gaping maw waiting to swallow them whole. She hesitated, glancing back at Emily and Timmy, their faces pale and wide-eyed with fear. "Mom," Timmy whispered, his voice thin. "I don't want to go in there." "I know. I don't either," Rachel admitted, but she felt the pull, a relentless tug beckoning her to step inside. "Maybe it's a way out," Emily suggested, her childlike innocence still battling through the encroaching dread. "What if it's worse?" Timmy interjected, glancing over his shoulder, as shadows twisted and coiled like living things. Rachel took a deep breath, the air heavy with dust and sorrow. "We'll never know unless we look. We have to stick together." Though her words were meant to reassure, her heart raced at the thought of what might lie beyond. With a firm grip on the doorknob, she opened it further, and they stepped into the void. The air shifted from stale to frigid, wrapping around them like the cold hands of the forgotten ones. The stairway descended into an inky blackness, and every step felt like a prompt to turn back. But as they moved deeper, the murmurings grew clearer. Help us," the chorus echoed, threading itself into the walls, surrounding them with desperate pleas. Rachel could feel it then, the palpable grief in the air, thick like fog, squeezing the breath from her lungs. The atmosphere throbbed with a collective sorrow, a heaviness that made her heart ache for the lost souls trapped here. What do they want? Timmy's small voice broke through the suffocating quiet. I don't know, Rachel answered, glancing back at her children, feeling possible futures spiral through her mind. But we can't let them take us. We can't become forgotten too. As they progressed, dread pooled in her stomach. Something felt amiss. Each step was met with an echo that didn't belong to them, as if something else was trotting silently at their heels. Without warning, from the corner of her eye, she caught a glimpse of movement in the shadows. Something shifted, a slithering form barely detectable, lingering just out of sight. Did you see that? She murmured, gripping the kids' hands tightly, forcing them to keep moving forward. The whispers amplified, rising into a crescendo of mournful wails. Rachel pressed on, the door behind them closing with a heavy thud, sealing them further into the unknown. Mom, I'm scared, Emily whimpered, squeezing Rachel's hand. Rachel wanted to comfort her, to assure her they would be okay. But she felt her resolve wavering, smothered in dread. Just keep walking, she urged, adrenaline fueling her movements. Then, she saw a flicker of light up ahead. Almost instinctively, she trudged toward it, but as they moved closer, the glow morphed into shadows that twisted and danced, forming unsettling shapes. The light pulsed in a rhythm that reminded her of a heartbeat that felt very much alive. Stop! Timmy yanked at her arm, pulling her back. We can't go there. But Rachel, entranced by the illumination, felt a compelling force drown out her children's pleas. She took another tentative step forward, her heart pounding like a gunshot. Just as she reached the threshold of the light, a figure lunged from behind, a distorted face emerging twisted, empty, and hungry. Help us! The voice screamed. Rachel staggered, fear coursing through her like wildfire. She turned, eyes wide with horror as the shadows around them lunged forward, reaching for her children. Run! She screamed, but as the darkness closed in, engulfing the room, she realized she had stepped too far. The labyrinth of shadows shifted, the light waned, and the forgotten ones chanted with a haunting harmony, their fingers clawing at the edges of her sanity. Mommy! Timmy's cry pierced the air, but the words dissolved into a choking fog. Keep running! She shouted, but the words tasted bitter. As she pulled her children close, the darkness surged, like a torrent about to unleash. A flood, threatening to drown their hopes. Amidst the chaos, the book lay forgotten on the floor, its pages whispering stories of sorrow, promises of despair. As the darkness came closer, Rachel felt the icy grip of the unknown wrapping around them. What had she invited into their lives? This was not merely a choice between shadows and light, it was a battle for their very souls. Then, just as they stumbled backward, the heart of the darkness surged, and a small voice emerged from the depths, chilling and sweet. Welcome home now. Rachel had to contend with not only the shadows of the past but the horrific certainty that something far worse awaited them. How could they escape the forgotten ones when the darkness craved their grief like an endless feast? Rachel's heart pounded as they stumbled further into the inky darkness. Each hurried breath sent chills racing through her. She could feel the humid chill wrap around her, thickening with each passing moment. The whispers had faded, replaced by an unsettling silence, a silence that screamed more than the mournful voices had. Where do we go now? Emily asked, her small voice quaking. Rachel's mind spun. She struggled to recall the layout of the space, to pinpoint a way out. We need to find stairs or a door, Rachel murmured, glancing around, desperate to catch a glimpse of anything resembling a way out. Shapes slithered in her peripheral vision, a movement she dared not look directly at, lest she confirm the presence of whatever horrors lurked in the dark. Suddenly, a low rumble pulsated through the floor, vibrating beneath her feet. Panic surged anew. Run! Rachel urged, gripping her children's hands tightly as they took off into the fog. With every frantic step, her instincts screamed at her to turn back, to escape the malevolent presence pressing in on them. Timmy stumbled, and Rachel felt her breath catch. I've got you, she gasped, lifting him into her arms. Mom, I don't want to be here, he wailed, burying his face in her shoulder. Rachel pressed on, scanning, hoping to see anything that might lead them back to safety. And then she saw a door, slightly ajar, glowing faintly in the shadows. She darted toward it, hope igniting in her chest like a match struck in the dark. Emily, grab Timmy. We're going! She shouted, urgency surging through her as she flung the door open. They tumbled through, slamming it shut behind them. But the warmth of refuge turned to cold, clammy dread almost instantly. They found themselves in a narrow hallway, lined with pictures hanging askew, faces staring down with hollow eyes, silently judging their terror. Did we lose them? Emily asked, panting. I hope so, Rachel said, her voice trembling. But even as she spoke, the air shifted again, a weighty presence creeping into the hallway. The shadows pressed against the walls, seeming to breathe. Suddenly, the door behind them rattled violently. A heavy thud echoed, sending frigid terror shooting down Rachel's spine. No! She gasped, backing away instinctively, pulling her children closer. What do we do? Timmy whimpered, eyes wide and shimmering with unshed tears. Find another way out, Rachel whispered hoarsely, her gaze darting along the hallway. It stretched endlessly, an intimidating maze filled with whispers that wrapped around her mind once more. There must be an exit here anywhere. We need to find it. As they crept down the corridor, the portraits seemed to shift in place, eyes following them, filled with malevolence and regret. With every step, Rachel whispered prayers, her heart pounding with dread. But then a soft, sinister giggle echoed around them, slithering under her skin, curling like smoke in the air. Help us come home, it whispered, the sound infectious and sweet, a melody laced with madness. Not again, Rachel murmured, shaking her head, unwilling to yield to its seductive call. Stay close, she commanded, her voice barely above a whisper, sensing the air grew heavier still. Suddenly, the walls appeared to pulse. The images in the frames transformed into grotesque smirks, mouths opening wide, hungry and malicious. Rachel's breath came in shallow gasps. She pressed on, pushing her children ahead of her. But as they moved deeper into the haunting corridor, a low growl rose from behind. Rachel froze, dread sprawling through her like creeping ivy. Mom! Timmy grasped her tightly, his little fingers trembling. Run! Go now! Rachel screamed, adrenaline surging as she shoved them forward. Darkness surged toward them, a tide of whispers and shadows. The hallway warped, bending as though it sought to trap them. Then, a ghostly hand reached out from the shadows, fingers skeletal and desperate. Rachel's stomach twisted. This was more than a haunted house, it was a web, woven from grief and sorrow, spinning tighter around them. Help us, the whispers hissed, a chilling symphony of agony pulling her in. But then, she saw a flicker of light piercing through the gloom, leading towards a door at the far end. Over there! She shouted, fueling her feet with renewed hope as she pushed her children forward. But as they tore toward the light, the shadows screamed. The darkness clung hard, scratching at their heels, and Rachel understood the forgotten ones wouldn't give up easily. Would they even reach the light? How could they escape when the darkness beckoned them so sweetly? And as they neared the threshold, the walls reverberated with the chilling refrain, "Welcome home." What awaited them on the other side was anything but salvation. The door swung open with a creak that echoed disturbingly through the air, brushing against Rachel's nerves. Light flooded the corridor, its brightness contrasting sharply with the darkness, but it was too bright, too forced, like a spotlight in a nightmare. Mom? Emily's voice trembled, uncertainty lacing her words. Is it safe? Rachel squinted into the brightness, her instincts screaming that nothing was ever truly safe in this forsaken place. She peered into the room beyond, a vast, decaying ballroom with ornate chandeliers hanging like specters overhead, their crystals tinkling eerily in the stale air. Dust danced in the air like tiny spirits, swirling in the luminous beams, teasing the edge of hope. Just stay close, Rachel urged, her voice wavering but determined as she stepped forward, her feet crunching against the debris strewn across the floor. As they entered, the door slammed shut behind them with a finality that sent heart-stopping panic through Rachel. The sound echoed, sealing them away from the darkness lurking beyond. She turned quickly, eyes wide, only to find the door had vanished. In its place, A wall of shadows loomed. No, 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 Timmy blubbered, inching closer into her protective embrace. The air thickened as Rachel felt the stares of countless unseen eyes. The space buzzed with anticipation, begging for a performance. Ghostly figures flickered in the corners of her vision, a heart-wrenching waltz of despair and longing, trapped in an eternal dance. Shadows twisted around her, forming a chaotic blur. She felt smothered by the sorrow and anger woven into the very walls. "Help us!" a chilling whisper floated through the air, softer this time but saturated with malice that pressed against her ears like a physical force. Rachel's heart raced. "Keep walking," she whispered, her voice shaking as she pulled her children deeper into the room. The urge to turn and run clawed at her throat, but she forced herself forward, scanning the dimming light for any chance of escape. Suddenly, the music began. A haunting melody drifted from the depths of the room, seducing her, wrapping her in its cold embrace. The chandeliers flickered above, each pulse blinking like a heartbeat, each beat syncing with the despairing notes. She couldn't fight it. The music tugged at her, urging her to sway, to succumb. "Mom?" Emily said, her small voice breaking her trance. "I don't like this." "Me either," Rachel breathed, but she felt a weight almost beckoning her. "We have to keep moving. There has to be a way out." Before she could finish, something an invisible force slammed into her from the side, sending her sprawling against the wooden floor. She gasped, shock coursing through her as darkness snaked its way toward her, wrapping tight around her legs. "Timmy!" Rachel screamed, but the shadows whispered a soothing lullaby, masking her fear. Emily's scream pierced the air, cutting through the enchantment. "Mom! Help!" Rachel's heart plummeted. Fighting her instinct to give in to the chaos, she scrambled to her feet, yanking her son along with her as she brushed the fog of despair aside. "Don't listen to the music!" Rachel barked, her voice rising above the haunting melody that swirled around them. "Don't let it in!" A shadow darted past her, swift and unsettling, its presence felt more than seen. It pulled at the edges of her mind, whispering promises of safety and warmth. She felt Timmy's grip tighten around her hand, and she felt it too, the familiar ache of yearning and solace wrapped in despair. Without thinking, Rachel ran toward the only illuminated area in the ballroom, a strange door shimmering at the far end. The whispers grew louder, reaching a deafening crescendo. She pushed herself forward, fueled by her love and desperation. With the door just within reach, she turned to check on her children. But horror clawed at her throat when she realized Emily was frozen, her eyes glazed, lost in the wavering, haunting figures that danced around them. "Emily!" Rachel shrieked, her heart racing. As she yanked Timmy toward the door, a cold hand grasped her wrist tightly. Rachel's breath hitched, fingers wrestling free. She burst free, throwing herself forward as the cacophony enveloped them. But the door slammed shut before she could reach it. And then silence fell, an overwhelming, heavy silence that crushed against her chest. "Mom?" Timmy whispered, his voice hauntingly small. "What's happening?" And in that moment of agonizing quiet, Rachel knew they were not alone. What shadows waited for them in that darkness? What entities existed beyond that locked door? And would they ever escape the haunting song of despair that cradled their very souls? The silence pressed heavily against Rachel's ears, drowning out her frantic thoughts. Shadows seemed to swell and contract, pulsating with a life of their own. She could feel them, brushing against her skin, slipping through her fingers like smoke. "We need to find her," she breathed through clenched teeth, fear gnawing at her resolve. "Mom, I can't see them." Timmy's voice wavered, quivering like a leaf in a storm. The panic in his tones sent ripples of dread coursing through Rachel's veins. She spun around, determined to drag Emily from the clutches of whatever darkness had ensnared her. "Emily!" Rachel's voice cut through the silence, desperate and raw. She felt an unyielding pull toward the center of the ballroom, a magnetic force as the shadows coiled and twisted around her. But she couldn't abandon her daughter. Falling to her knees, she reached out, her fingers trailing along the floor, searching for any sign of Emily. "Mom, I feel we shouldn't be here," Timmy whimpered, his soft voice a beacon of fear. Rachel forced herself to ignore it, feeling the cold creep up her spine. Time slipped away, the air thickening with despair. Suddenly, straight ahead, the chandeliers flickered violently, their light revealing a figure tall, shadow-like, almost human, leaning against the far wall, watching them with hollow eyes. Rachel's throat tightened. "Emily!" The figure pointed into the distance, towards the disjointed rhythm of the music, but its movement was unsettling, like a twisted marionette. It beckoned them. She had no choice, she needed to get closer. "Come on, Timmy. Stay close." Rachel grabbed Timmy's hand, forcing her legs to move. The haunting allure of the music intensified, weaving through her thoughts, dragging her deeper into its web. But the figure stayed still, an outline in the gloom, watching, waiting. As they moved, the shadows morphed, dancing around them in menacing waves. Ethereal whispers coiled through her mind, secrets of the past threatening to break free. Rachel's heart raced, fueled by adrenaline and dread. "Mom, I don't want to go closer," Timmy protested, digging his heels into the ground. "It's wrong, I know, sweetheart. But we have to find your sister." She pulled him forward, locking her eyes on the figure. Every inch she took felt like a struggle against the riptide. "Help us, save us," the whisper returned, a chorus of lost souls echoing around them. It wrapped like a stranglehold around her chest, tightening her breath. "Don't listen!" Rachel shouted, but it was as if all doubt danced tantalizingly between them and the pulsating figure. The music swirled, crescendoing into a chaotic harmony, sweet, yet laced with anguish. Timmy began to whimper, his small body trembling beside her. She glanced at him, and for a moment, the world around them blurred. An overwhelming sense of hopelessness threatened to swallow her whole. "No," Rachel gritted her teeth, forcing her feet to carry her forward. "We will get through this." Just then, another figure emerged from the shadows, a second shadow, darker and more dense than the first. It extended its hand, talons glistening in the light, reaching out for Timmy. "Mom! Help!" The cry shot through Rachel, panic igniting in her chest. In that harrowing moment, Emily's voice echoed within Rachel's mind, fragile yet carrying an intense weight. "Mom, where are you?" There was something about that voice, an urgency that shimmered with a familiar fear. With a surge of determination, Rachel lunged forward, instinct taking over. The shadows clawed and writhed around her, but she shoved through, Timmy's grip slipping as she pushed to reach the first figure. But fate, as relentless as time, twisted suddenly when she glanced back. The shadows swept over Timmy like ink spilling across paper, engulfing him. "No!" Rachel screamed, lunging towards him, but the darkness coiled tighter, stitching him into silence. Now she faced the illuminated figure alone, as it smiled wickedly, the shadows behind it revealing the faces of the lost, the trapped souls of this cursed place. "What do you want?" Rachel breathed, her voice trembling. "Your choice," it hissed, each word laced with venom. "Will you join them or fight?" Rachel felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out the ghostly melody that echoed all around. Could she truly save her children? Or would she succumb to the darkness that cradled her soul? The figure waited, its hollow eyes penetrating deep within her. The choice loomed before her like a meal laid upon a table. Would she feast or starve? And at that moment, she realized there was no going back. What horrifying pact awaited her if she chose to fight? Would she discover the dark truth hidden in this haunted ballroom, or would the shadows consume everything she loved? The figure loomed, its hollow gaze boring through Rachel, as the whispered entreaties of the shadows echoed around her. "Join them," the sinister voice cooed, "or fight. The choice is yours." Confusion surged like a tide, and Rachel felt her resolve fraying. She had to act, but every instinct screamed at her to run, to escape the suffocating grip of the darkness surrounding her. Then, somewhere within the cacophony of whispers, she heard Emily's voice again. It cut through the din, sharp, desperate. "M.O.M." It rang out, ricocheting off the walls, pulling her back from the precipice of despair. Rachel clutched her stomach, bow rising. "Emily! Where are you?" Her heart thundered in her chest, each frantic beat a reminder that time was slipping away. Save her, the figure taunted, its elongated fingers twitching to beckon her again. Get away from her! Rachel shouted, her anger igniting like gasoline on a flame. She took a step forward, feeling the shadows recoil, as if her defiance shocked them. You want to take my family? The response was immediate. The laughter of the figure transformed into a guttural growl. Dark tendrils shot outward from its form, curling toward her like serpents seeking to ensnare her. But fear twisted into strength within Rachel. With every ounce of courage, she tore through the darkness, the shadows clawing at her, whispering her greatest fears, feeding on her despair. Leave us alone! She roared, the sound reverberating in the empty ballroom. The lights surged, briefly illuminating the ethereal waltzing figures trapped within the gloom, faces twisted in terror and longing, their eyes pleading. Help us, they chanted in unison, a hypnotic lull. Rachel squeezed her eyes shut, trying to shut out the sorrow and desperation emanating from them. She felt a tremor at her feet. Timmy! She opened her eyes, the momentary surge of light fading, revealing a writhing mass contorting around him. Timmy! Her heart sank, the shadows gnashing at her resolve, dragging at her sanity. With every fiber of her being, Rachel launched herself towards her son. The figure strained forward, its wailing hiss echoing, "Foolish mother!" Ignoring the shadows that lashed at her, Rachel twisted onto her knees, her hands reaching for Timmy. But the darkness fought with a vengeance, wrapping cold tendrils around her wrists, squeezing until she could scarcely breathe. Under the pressure, she felt sharp nails of panic sink into her. I want to let you take my son! She screamed, her voice cracking. In that tense moment, her fear exploded into something raw and primal. Adrenaline surged, fueling a fierce defiance. And then, something shifted. The room quaked violently, the figures trapped in the shadows shrieked as if her anger had set them free. The walls of the ballroom pulsated, the music crescendoing into a maddening symphony, drowning out the haunting whispers. For the first time, Rachel felt the shadows recoil, a hint of fear in their monstrous forms. She grasped Timmy's hand, their fingers melding together like lifelines through chaos. Hold on, baby! She gasped, her gaze darting around wildly for an escape. The figure writhed, its face distorting with rage, promising vengeance in silent screams. You cannot escape! It yelled louder now, as the shadows reached desperately, clawing. Rachel stood, pulling Timmy with her, adrenaline surging. They turned toward the ballroom exit. Was it real? Or just another trick of the darkness? Run! Rachel cried, plunging toward the open door, the shadows roiling behind them. An inferno of dread ignited within her. The echoes of lost souls wailed, urging her back, clinging to every hope they once had. Still, she pressed on, feeling Timmy's weight shift beside her. Just as they reached the door, a weight landed on her shoulder, a dark shadow lunged for them both, talons inches from her neck. No! Timmy screamed, and in that moment, her heart froze in terror. Would they slip into the void like so many before them? Did the darkness have a final surprise waiting, even in their moment of desperate escape? As Rachel burst through the threshold, the air shifted, and she realized nothing was as it seemed. The shadows behind them roared, angry and furious. What lay ahead in the unknown was just as terrifying as what they had fled from. And would Emily be waiting at the end of their escape, or had they truly escaped at all? They stumbled into an alley, the air thick with an unsettling silence. Rachel's breaths came in rapid gasps, panic flaring in her chest. She turned, half expecting the malevolent figure to surge through the door after them, but the darkness remained behind, a monstrous silhouette waiting in the shadows. Mom, where's Emily? Timmy's voice trembled, pulling Rachel's attention back to the present, urgency flooding her mind. We need to find her, Rachel said, her voice shaky but resolute. She took Timmy's hand tightly, looking down the narrowing alley, which felt more like a trap than a pathway to safety. Stay close to me. As they moved forward, the shadows twisted against the walls like living, breathing entities, whispering secrets that clawed at Rachel's sanity. Each step felt heavier, and the alley stretched endlessly. Was it real? Was the world around her just an extension of the darkness they had fled? A flickering light flickered at the end of the passage. Rachel strained her eyes against the dimness. Hope surged but was quickly snuffed out by a creeping chill that slithered across her skin. "Do you see that?" she asked Timmy, her voice barely above a whisper. He nodded, unease clouding his youthful features. "Let us hurry," Rachel urged, pulling him forward. They ran toward the light, her heart pounding, a frantic drum in the stillness. The light revealed itself as a cracked lantern swinging above what looked like an old wooden door, half ajar. She hesitated for just a moment, but Emily's voice rang clear in her mind, desperate and innocent. "M.O.M. Emily!" Rachel shouted as they dashed forward. She pushed the door open wider, the door creaking ominously in protest. Inside, the room was eerily familiar. It was a small, dimly lit kitchen, but the walls were adorned with faded photographs. She stepped carefully, the floorboards creaking beneath their weight as her heart raced at the sight of crumpled papers scattered on the table. "Mom?" A small voice echoed from a corner shrouded in shadow. Her heart leaped at Emily's voice. Rachel spun around to see her daughter crouched behind an old couch, wide-eyed and terrified. "Emily!" Rachel cried, rushing toward her. Timmy followed, relief washing over them like a wave. Rachel swept Emily into her arms, holding her tightly as her body shook. "I thought we lost you. I heard you. I was so scared," Emily whimpered, burying her face in Rachel's shoulder. But as she held her children, an unbearable weight descended upon Rachel. The shadows in the room thickened, swirling with renewed vengeance. Rachel felt the atmosphere crackle with a sinister energy, curling around them. A low growl rumbled through the room, vibrating the very floor. It was the figure, its form growing more defined, more corporeal, as if feeding off her relief. "You brought her back," it hissed, its voice a grotesque melody. "But now I shall savor your fear." "Run!" Rachel shouted, adrenaline surging again. Fleeing felt futile, but panic raced through her as she pulled Emily and Timmy behind her. The figure's elongated arm reached out, dark fingertips stretching, just inches from them. In that moment of chaos, Rachel's instincts kicked in. "We need to find a way out." She spun toward the back of the kitchen, her heart pounding in her throat as the growl grew louder, echoing her deepest fears. They dashed through the narrow hallway, the shadows at their heels, slipping like water through cracks. The walls felt alive, pulsing and breathing, their despair trapping them in this endless nightmare. "What if we don't escape? What if it gets us?" Timmy breathed heavily, matching her pace, fear dripping from his every word. "Just keep running!" Rachel screamed, the dread clawing at her from behind. Then, at the end of the hall, a door appeared, more solid than the rest. It wasn't just a door, it was a glimmer of hope. Rachel flung it open, and they tumbled through, crashing into another room. Yet, there was no comfort here. This room felt colder than the last, shadows creeping from every corner. And the door they entered from slammed shut, sealing them within. "Is this it?" Emily whimpered, her tiny voice breaking Rachel's heart. Behind them, the figure reformed, this time looming larger, its hollow eyes glowing like coals in the dark. It laughed, a screeching sound that shook the very foundations around them. "Your choices have led you here, and it is too late to turn back." Suddenly it lunged forward. Rachel felt the ground slip away beneath her. Was this the end of their fight? "Mom?" Timmy echoed softly, a question wrapped in fear. The room spun as the figure reached out again, and in a desperate act, Rachel grabbed both children, pulling them tightly against her. In that moment, she knew they had to face whatever lay ahead together, but did they have the strength to stand against the darkness that now surrounded them as the shadows began to close in? Would they find a path, or would they become just another tale lost in the void? The air in the new room felt thicker, almost suffocating, as if the shadows themselves were trying to swallow them whole. Rachel's heartbeat quickened, drowning out all sound except the manic pounding in her ears. She squeezed her children tighter, feeling the warmth of their small bodies against her but also their fear a palpable, electric current that echoed her own. "Where are we?" Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Rachel didn't answer. In truth, she didn't know. The walls closed in around them, growing taller and narrower, their dimness increasing with every shuddering breath. The figure's laughter reverberated in her chest like a funeral dirge, a reminder of the danger stalking them. Stay behind me, she commanded, trying to sound braver than she felt. They edged backward as the creature's shadow loomed larger, a billowing mass of darkness and malice, ready to snuff out their lives as it flickered like a dying flame. In a sudden burst, the creature lunged. Rachel's instincts kicked in. She yanked the kids to the side just as its clawed hand tore through the air where they had stood. The rush of air brushed past them, icy and static. They stumbled, nearly falling, but regained their footing. Where do we go? There's nowhere to hide. Timmy's voice cracked with panic. Just keep running. Rachel shouted again, her heart a drumbeat of desperation. Ahead of them, another door loomed, dark and foreboding, but it was the only option. Rachel sprinted toward it, pulling her children along. The beast followed, its growls growing fainter as if they were escaping its reach. Just as they reached the door, a chilling wind swallowed the hallway, and Rachel pushed it open. Light washed over them, bright and blinding. She momentarily shielded her eyes, the glow warming her skin as if promising safety, or maybe it was a trap. Go! She urged, propelling them forward. They crossed the threshold into what looked like a once familiar living room. Photographs lined the walls, images from a past life. Family gatherings, carefree smiles, and memories that now felt tainted. The furniture was draped in dusty sheets, shadows pooling in the corners that seemed to watch. Mom, look! Emily pointed, her voice reverberating with a mix of awe and fear. Rachel followed her gaze, heart sinking. A mirror hung above the mantel, its surface rippling as if the glass were alive. Is that what she thought? The reflection morphed, displaying not just their faces but the looming figure behind them, clear and approaching. Its chaotic energy crackled in the air. Don't look! Rachel shouted, yanking Timmy and Emily away. But the sound of soft laughter, that grotesque melody, tickled at her ears and pulled her back. I can see you, it hissed, its voice echoing out of the mirror. You cannot hide from me. Find something, Rachel urged. We need to fight back. Desperation clawed at her throat as she rummaged through the room, tossing aside furniture, searching for anything that could protect them. Her fingers brushed over a heavy old book. She snatched it up, its cover dusty and cracked. As she opened it, she felt the air shift with a strange energy, the pages whispering secrets lost to time. Mom, it's coming! Timmy wailed, staring back towards the mirrored reflection now rippling like a monstrous tide. But Rachel was lost in the text, words leapt off the page, both enchanting and frightening. They promised power, a chance to reclaim what was stolen from them. Mom! Emily's scream jolted her back into reality. The figure was much closer now, its presence warped and menacing. Rachel pressed the book into Timmy's hands. Keep this safe. You both have to trust me. With a deep breath, Rachel began to chant the words she had just read, feeling ancient energies swell around her. The room trembled, walls quaking as if recognizing the power she invoked. The mirror cracked, fissures spreading like lightning across its surface. But the figure lunged, its form shattering the remaining distance in an instant, eyes glowing with fury as they met Rachel's resolute gaze. Your words can't protect you! It bellowed, the sound reverberating in her bones, drawing closer. The chanting grew louder, faster, and Rachel felt a surge of strength pooling in her fingertips, warmth coursing through her veins. It felt alive, almost like something was awakening within her. As the darkness edged ever closer, Rachel could only wonder, would the power be enough to save them, or would they be lost forever in this fight against the shadows? Would she be able to confront not just the creature, but the fear that gnawed at her, wanting nothing more than to erase their existence? What if she couldn't turn the tide? The energy surrounded Rachel like a protective shroud, crackling and charged. She felt the ancient words pouring from her lips, as if some hidden reservoir of strength had just unleashed itself within her. The fearful whispers of the souls imprisoned in that cursed ballroom swirled around her, echoing her resolve to fight. You can't have us! She shouted, her voice a bomb against the insidious laughter that had lingered too long in her ears. The figure snarled, its shadowy form twisting in anger, burrowing into the air like a black cloud seeking to encompass her. The cracks in the mirror widened, revealing glimpses of the darkness beyond, a realm filled with distorted faces and endless shadows. Rachel could feel the weight of despair pressing down on her, but she tightened her grip on the children and pushed the fear away. "Mom!" Emily cried out, eyes wide with terror. "Help us! It's getting closer!" Rachel turned, locking eyes with Timmy. She could see his little heart thumping wildly in his chest. "Hold on to me, both of you!" she ordered, her resolve hardening once more. As the shadows lunged toward them, she drew from the depths of her will the love for her children blazed like a fierce fire against the encroaching cold. She spoke louder, her voice gaining clarity. "Let the forgotten ones be released, wrench yourself from their grasp." The mirror shuddered, trust and rebellion vibrated through her words. The shadows hissed, recoiling as if stung. Rachel felt a surge of warmth, urging her to continue. She wove through the incantation, her voice rising, echoing with power as anger coursed through her veins. But as the final words tumbled from her lips, the figure bellowed, "You will pay for this." In that moment, the darkness surged forward like a tidal wave, shaking the very foundation of the room, tearing at the seams of her reality. Terrified, Rachel reached for her children. The chaos erupted with a terrifying roar, and the room quaked around them. Then, suddenly, a beam of light shot from the cracks of the mirror, illuminating the room in a blinding glow. The shadows screamed, their forms twisting and dissolving in the strength of the light. The figure faltered, its angry face melting into a multitude of sorrowful eyes, each one reflecting the pain of lost souls lost but not forgotten. "No!" it shrieked, the sound grating against Rachel's ears. The phantom stretched its ghastly fingers toward her one last time, but they simply dissipated in the radiant light. Amidst the chaos, the room shifted. The oppressive shadows shrank away, retreating from the light, their anguished cries blending with the freed whispers of the long-lost victims. Rachel felt the essence of those souls lifting beside her, swirling like a soft wind. "Thank you," they murmured as their energy merged with the light, illuminating the corners of the room, filling the air with warmth and relief. "Mom!" Timmy exclaimed, his voice full of wonder as he gazed up at the swirling light. "Look! They're free!" "Yes, baby," Rachel breathed, tears of relief streaming down her face. "They're free." As the shadows faded into nothingness, the mirror before them gleamed like a portal, revealing their home behind it, the attic, untouched and familiar, still illuminated by the flickering candle they had left behind. "Is it really over?" Emily asked quietly, clinging to Rachel's side. "We're safe now," Rachel reassured, kneeling down to wrap her arms around both children. "We made it together." The mirrored surface shimmered as if holding infinite memories, a testament to the fight they had endured. They stared into their own reflections, heart filled with love, the bonds of their family radiant. With each second, the phenomena settled into silence, faded shadows transformed into whispers of hope. They stepped through the mirror, greeted by the smell of home, the scent of food simmering, and the echo of laughter long missed. Rachel turned and looked at their attic, now bathed in a soft, warm glow. It was no longer a place of fear but a sanctuary laden with memories and new beginning. "We did it," she said softly, clasping their hands together. "We faced the darkness, and it's behind us." As they made their way downstairs, the shadows of the past gently dissipated, trailing like smoke. The burden of grief began to lift, and a fresh wave of hope surged through them. Together, they stepped into the next chapter, ready to embrace the light. And as they closed the door behind them, Rachel felt the weight of despair lift into nothingness, the echoes of the forgotten fading with every step, a promise of new stories yet to unfold. Now, friends, if you felt the shivers, if your heart raced as much as Rachel's, it's time to take action. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss any of these exclusive stories that can send chills down your spine. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and keep the spooky tales coming. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to know how you felt. And please, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is crucial to keeping our storytelling alive.